productivity and many other kind of a solutions that we all talk about, both the technological, institutional, and the social and the economic interventions. And here, as I said, so the presentations which you'll hear and our focus is more in trying to see that how best on farm and off farm we can try and increase the water productivity and water efficiency and also the irrigation management services and the delivery. So with that is the point of intention. And here also with the GIZ is our co-partner in this. So what basically we'll be doing in this session is there are presentations from the Central Water Commission which are focusing on the irrigation service delivery and water productivity, and one of the flagship program of India, which is Prime Minister Krishi Sinchai Yojana, that's PM irrigation scheme, and many other presentations. And then something which jointly with Indian Council of Agriculture Research and IWMI we have been working on. So you will be listening to those presentations being made jointly on mostly on the water risk related measures as well as on enhancing economic water productivity, which we will be talking about. And so then we will be also talking about something, because you know that the way we are facing the risk of the climate change, that how best we can be more adaptive to climate change. So that's one of our colleagues will be talking about that. So I think in total that this is, in this session, what you are going to be looking into is a joint efforts of IWMI, ICR, CWC, and GIZ. And so before I leave, I'll try and introduce the chair and the co-chair of this session, and I'll request Dr. Mark Smith to please take the chair position. And Mark Smith, as you all know, is a Director General of International Water Management Institute, and he doesn't need much more introduction than that, because in the morning session you all have listened to his excellent presentation which he made just before the lunch. So Mark, I invite you to please take the chair as to chair the session. And next, I'll request Dr. Bhaskar, who is the Assistant Director General, Indian Council of Agriculture Research. He is heading agronomy, agroforestry, and climate change. And from the ICR side, he is representing, and he is also very much deeply involved with the kind of the work which we are going to be presenting here today from the ICR and also from the IWMI. So please, I would request you to please take the chair, seat as a co-chair, and I think I not go into the more details of their CV, because that's why the purpose was to display it right up front in front of you. And so I think with this and not getting into much of the audio, so I'll hand it over to the able of Dr. Mark Smith and Dr. Bhaskar to please take it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sika. You hear me well? I think we do a moment just to give some introductory remarks. So, Spirit, to add my thanks to yours. Central as well as GIZ for your cooperation and collaboration in putting together today's event. Agriculture is a crucial component of the puzzle of sustainable development, of sustainable management. Agriculture uses 70% water globally, 90% in some. So we take 70% of our focus and in terms of action and investment as we look at sustainable development, as we look at climate change, as we look at how to manage water in the future. But it doesn't. Right? It doesn't. My perception is that there is a bit of a disconnect between agriculture and water management relative to the size of the challenge agricultural water use represents and the impacts of agricultural water use. So this session I see as a very welcome and timely opportunity at India Water Week to bring some of that attention that is needed to these issues. and look at what are the solutions that are emerging for agricultural water management, both in terms of managing supply and use of water in agriculture, but also managing the impacts of agricultural water on water resources. So I very much look forward to a very interesting session. We have a range of speakers that we'll listen to that you've seen on the screen. And hopefully have time, as you've said, hopefully have time at the end for a good discussion with all of those that are here today. So thank you. Dr. Basker.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Of course, the importance of agriculture water management has been told. And now, in India also now the demand for water, particularly from agriculture side, is increasing. And everywhere in the globe, there is a nexus between food security and agriculture. With increasing urbanization again, and so there is the local government, there will be conflict and competition between these for the water. So obviously we are going to increase the agriculture water productivity is the good point here. So that will be discussed through research and innovation. What are the innovation solutions are there before us that are going to be taken up in this two sessions? Immediate speakers are there from both IMI as well as from CWC and ICR. Of course, we have Indian Institute of Water Management located in Nashville since 2 to 3 decades. We have been working in water application methods and some of their efficiencies. We are also now looking for the canal water management and its productivity. And of course, Honorable Prime Minister of India is calling for the per drop more crop. That is more important. That one slogan will tell the importance of the water in agriculture. So without wasting much time, so let us get into the session, sir. So there are 5 speakers in the first session. I think I request chairman to call the names of the speakers.
Certainly. So I would like to welcome the first speaker, please, which is Dr. Krishnani from the Central Water Commission. Please.
Yeah. So I would like to introduce the first speaker, Sri N.M. Krishnamurthy. He is BTech Civil Engineering from NIT Calicut, and he is working joined the Central Water Commission as Assistant Director in the year 1980. He got promoted as Deputy Director and Director and Chief Engineer in 2016. He has worked in various phase units of CWC such as hydrology studies, hydrological observation, flood forecasting, and etc. And is going to present the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. What are its policies and how it's benefiting the farmers across India? That's what he is going to present. See, please go ahead.
PPT. Good afternoon, everybody. Chair, co-chair, and all members in the audience. The Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana is an umbrella program which started in 2016. Please next. Yeah, just go briefly into the 4-5 initial slides, which will explain the background of the. Yeah. Can you go back? I want to go back. Yeah. Next, yeah. in the country as a whole in India, as you all will be knowing, we form percent of the global population, and we have less than 4% of the water availability in the world. So we are highly skewed in terms of availability of water. That is why we need to have storage, but our storage is too less, around 257 BCM nationally. And this, there is huge variation both in temporal and spatial distribution of rain.
special technologies in assessment, planning, or designing or monitoring of the programs or impact monitoring, or enabling or capacitating the people who are responsible for delivery of the programs. So it proven to be very effective in all cases. Next. So in overall, what we found that the approach we evolved along with our partner or agencies like International Water Management Institute, we gathered the learnings of other geographies and other expert agencies and tried to integrate into the overall approach. So we came out with a new approach called composite water resource management approach, which is going beyond MGNREGA. Like so it is relevant for watershed programs. It is also relevant for PMKSY or NFSM. So all other programs, it is equally important. So in this, yeah, 1 minute. In this, we piloted groundwater management, or how we can leverage the MGNREGA program for groundwater management. So we demonstrated it effectively in the state of Madhya Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Next. Yeah, so I will not go into details. Yeah, next. So we have produced several knowledge products which are important for the key stakeholders to disseminate and take learning of APASCA in other geographies for mainstreaming these ideas at national level. Yeah, next. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jagdish Purit, for giving some account on sustainable ground management through, particularly you are implementing many of the projects through Manrega, and you are closely working with rural development. Jagdish Purit is a development professional operational since last 20 years. Okay, I could not introduce at the beginning. Just keep. Now, next presentation is going to be made by Aditi Mukherjee. She is from the IWMI, that is International Water Management Institute. She is a principal researcher at the IWMI, and she led the water and air team at the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICMOD, in Nepal. And Aditi was now coordinating lead author of the water chapter in the working group of second, and she has published many papers and all those things. And now she is a human geographer by training, and he is a PhD from Cambridge University, United Kingdom. Now she is going to give us the water adaptation to climate change, how we have to adapt ourselves under the changing climate. But thank you. You can go ahead, Aditi.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be speaking in this session, and I want to share some of the adaptation related findings from the IPCC. So while this is not directly related to, as you know, these IPCC assessments are global, and even though in this particular adaptation assessment where we assessed over 2,000 papers and quite a large chunk of them were from India, but the findings that I'm going to say are kind of more global in nature, but with implications for India and for that matter overall. So while it's clear, some of the main headline findings from IPCC were that we are already living in a 1.1 degree world. This 1.1 degree world compared to the pre-industrial times, this 1.1 degree warmer world is due to human caused warming, which is basically human emissions, GHG, carbon and GHG emissions. And therefore the need for mitigation, which is to reduce GHG emissions, but also at the same time adaptation is how do you cope and adapt to the changes that have already happened. Within that overall perspective, I wanted to talk about what our assessment found. Oh, yeah, you are changing. Yeah, okay, okay, good. So what do we know about adaptation? Actually, for all that we say that we need to adapt, and I know there is adaptation initiatives going everywhere, but our main assessment, and this is based on the published, because IPCC also has the compulsion that we can only assess what's been published and what's been peer reviewed. So actually pretty little is known about the actual extent of adaptation implementation. We believe that only a small fraction of this broader adaptation is actually published and in a form that can be assessed in these kind of formal synthesis. Whatever is documented, we are also finding that adaptation is largely fragmented, largely ad hoc. They are happening, not in a very planned way. They are mostly spontaneous. Farmers are doing what they can do without a lot of planning. And majority of the adaptation responses are coming from Asia as well as Africa, which is kind of makes sense because these are also the two most climate exposed continents where there's a lot of agriculture, and a lot of the adaptation is actually happening in agriculture. This is something that's I think well known. Adaptation is taking place at the local level, which is fine and which is as it should be. Adaptation should be local, but what is not fine is that a lot of this adaptation is really unplanned and ad hoc, and I think that's where we require more coordinated approaches. And for us and for me personally, what was a matter of major concern, and we are saying this after a 3-year very in-depth work reviewing thousands and thousands of papers, and when the adaptation community comes together and we say that we do not know, the current evidence is not enough to tell us whether adaptation is reducing risk. I think that's a serious knowledge gap that we have. The next slide, please. Of that, what we are finding is that water is pretty central to adaptation. 60% of all adaptation, documented adaptation, I must say. A lot of the adaptation happens but doesn't get documented in the form of papers. So I think that's our limitation. But having said that, water is central to adaptation. 60% of all adaptation is occurring in response to water-related hazards. These hazards are floods, droughts, rainfall variability, and of course heat is also important. You can see, I don't know if you can actually see, but heat related ones comes in the third one. So these circles actually show the strength of evidence, which in our case is number of papers, and the color there shows what is the confidence in those papers, because not all papers are same. So some papers have very causal inference that okay, this was the adaptation, this was the outcome. So that's the color scheme. The bigger the circle means more evidence we have in terms of number of paper, and darker the color is that we are very confident about that evidence. So you will see that majority of the adaptation are happening for droughts and precipitation variability and extremes, followed by heat and floods. And when it comes to these rows, these are the different kind of adaptation. I think this is all of us know, and I know we have scientists here who have led and worked in NICRA and other such coordinated efforts by the government of India. So some of these adaptation practices are improved cultivars and agronomic practices. We have changes in cropping pattern and crop systems. Then we have the third important one are on-farm irrigation, water management, followed by soil and water moisture. So this slide is making 2 points. First is adaptation is happening because of water-related hazard, and also many of the adaptation interventions use water. Example, on-farm irrigation. So when you have drought or any of those rainfall variability issues, then you try to do better on-farm water management. So, so basically adaptation is happening because water is causing a problem, which is hazard, but adaptation, like water, is also the solution. So farmers are using better water management or irrigation. So water that way is a part of the problem as well as a part of the solution. Next slide, please. We are also finding, and this is again not a surprise, adaptation is happening in every sector, and particularly in agriculture, as obviously agriculture is the largest consumptive user of water. Here we have done the same classification, but this time by sector. So we have the same like kind of, you know, the adaptation practices, and then we have kind of coded them in which sector they are happening, and you can see that majority of these are happening in the agriculture sector. The next one, please. So basically water and agriculture are extremely important when it comes to adaptation. So this is a same diagram, but this time shown pictorially on a map. So we are finding the documented cases of adaptation is happening in all regions, and more so in Africa and Asia, where there is high dependence on climate exposed livelihoods like agriculture. And the size of the circle here actually shows the number of case studies on adaptation that we could assess, and you can see that the green bits are about agriculture. So when it comes to Asia, Africa and Latin America, those are also the places where CGIAR works. We are finding that agriculture is where all of that adaptation is taking place. But when you look at somewhere like Europe, then lot of the adaptation is in the urban and the peri-urban sector. It kind of, all of this kind of makes pretty intuitive sense. I mean, lot of the adaptation we are seeing from the global north are really about urban floods. Urban floods kind of are one of the top adaptation measures that, like, you know, how do you adapt to urban floods? The next slide, please. Here we are finding again the point that I had mentioned earlier. Most adaptation is autonomous and by individuals and households. Civil society and governments are also important players. They're important players either by funding those adaptation, they're either by planning some of those adaptation. However, profit-making private sector is not so much, and I say this because we often kind of say that, okay, there should be more, private sector should invest in adaptation, which is an admirable thought, but we have to pause and think that what do we think the private sector would have in these kind of investments, which may not always have, very quick and apparent returns. But then, as I said, less role of private sector in adaptation could also be a result of the kind of documents that we are allowed to assess in IPCC, which, as I said, peer-reviewed published literature. Maybe private sector is doing adaptation, but overall my hunch is not so much. Adaptation is still done by individuals and households. Yeah. Next slide, please. Then we are finding that most adaptation have many benefits but may not always reduce risk. So I think a good example of that is early warning system. I think that's a adaptation measure with lot of benefits. For most importantly, saves lives. But then it does not necessarily reduce the risk. Properties still get destroyed, and then people who come back in those areas still have their livelihoods destroyed. So how do we actually measure effectiveness of adaptation is something, one of those things I think the scientific community needs to come together and come to an agreement about how do we say that an adaptation has reduced risk, because that's where I think there's a lot of uncertainty. Next slide, please. We also looked at the future effectiveness of adaptation, and our Director General Mark Smith also mentioned it briefly in his keynote address this morning. So compared to the current adaptation, where we had over 2,000 case studies for this, we've only found 45 cases, because future effectiveness of adaptation is not something that a lot of studies have happened, and what we find is actually a matter of big concern. Next slide, please. We are finding that adaptation becomes less effective with more warming. So what it basically says that we have assessed all those, like for everything that we had assessed in the current adaptation, we also assessed, and those red circles are showing how much is the residual risk after adaptation, and the blue circles are showing how much risk reduction adaptation is doing. So we can find an NA. NA means that for those, basically we had no evidence. I mean, for a lot of adaptation for which you have evidence now are not there in the future. So we are finding that even something like actually on-farm irrigation remains effective till up to 3 degrees centigrade, which is much better than something like improved cultivars. Improved cultivars start to become ineffective at 2 degrees and beyond. So I think this is an important and a new contribution to understand whether adaptation will remain effective. The next slide, please. Yes, so we are also finding that there are various kind of constraints to adaptation. Here the main constraint is really financial and technical know-how, while also there are places where we are hard limits to adaptation. Next slide, please. And we are finding that there are certain locations where limits to adaptation are being reached. Mountains are a very good example. In the mountains, once you have like, melting of glaciers, and if livelihoods depends on those glaciers, so there is an actual hard limit on what you can adapt. Same is the example of small islands. In the small islands, if groundwater lens is kind of, polluted by seawater intrusion, there's not much that you can do to adapt. So, and I think that would be the last, no, there would, just next slide please. And finally, adaptation alone will not. So, couple of things, we do not know how effective adaptation is. We need to understand that better. We know that adaptation will become less effective at higher levels of global warming. And we know that whatever we are doing currently, losses and damages are still happening. And this loss and damage will be a big agenda for the COP discussions that will start in next week. So I'll conclude with that, and with something, this is a sobering statement. This is the last statement, this is the last final paragraph of the summary for policymaker, which says that the scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and health of the planet. Any further delay in concerted global action will miss the brief, rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. Thank you, and yeah.
Thank you, Aditi, for narrating about how the adaptation is being taken place across the globe and different geographies, and also how the agricultural practices which are making adaptation very much there in the agriculture sector compared to other sectors. And of course, there should have been some more information on how adaptation is there with respect to the irrigation management in specific, if it's a general attack. Thank you very much. Next one is, it's a joint presentation from K.V. Rao from Krida ICR and Giriraj Amarnath from IWMI. Of course, K.V. Rao is working as a principal scientist at ICR Central Krida, and is an agriculture engineer by profession, PhD in soil and water management. Since 25 years, he has been working in ICR. His main areas of interest include in situ water harvesting, watershed modeling, drought, etc. And he is a member secretary of the Agriculture Contingency Cell of ICR Krida, Hyderabad. And he is the principal investigator in the ICR IWMI project on drought monitoring and management. And it is followed by Dr. Giriraj Amarnath. He is a principal researcher, disaster risk management and climate resilience and research group leader, water risk to development and resilience of the IWMI. His role focuses on climate risk assessment, monitoring and early warning tools using Earth observation data and modeling tools, and the development of disaster risk insurance solutions. He recently won the World Geospatial Excellence Award and 2020 Geo SDG Award for promoting innovative solutions in managing floods and drought using digital. He is a PhD in applied remote sensing from the National Remote Sensing Center, India. And I think Giriraj Amarnath is going to start the presentation.
Yeah.
Followed by the Rao.
So thanks. So again, I will take a overlap slide with Dr. K.V. Rao on the drought topic specifically. I think while the previous speaker focused on the importance of adaptation in generally to the practice of water issues, this particular session is focused mainly on water related disasters. And while I see a strong linkage between the water related disasters with the water resource management strategy. Often we saw even in the opening session, it was very much clearly highlighted the role of tackling the water risk, which is part of the definition of water security as such. And we also know like very clearly that the increasing access to early warning, which is very important aspect of reducing risk. Not just by early warning you will be able to reduce risk. You would be able to empower communities, you will be able to identify regions where communities should be empowered from the flood and the drought from the agriculture sector. So the slide what we have, next slide. So we are highlighting two different interventions that has been tested in joint collaboration with the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. One is looking at the integrated drought risk management, which has been strengthened through the program called South Asia Drought Monitoring System. As you can see here, this is a growing need of early warning and drought management efforts in the region. What you see here is having a better observation and monitoring, and providing better monitoring capabilities, providing informations on planning and preparedness. Dr. K.V. Rao will talk about how drought monitoring informations have been used for drought planning and preparedness strategy. And important is also to communicate the type of risk that is emerging, whether it is flood or drought, and how do you promote coping strategies in order to tackle the issues like drought. So the next slide, if you see, it talks about number of products we have been developing in an integrated framework of South Asia Drought Monitoring System. On the left side, you see a stack of seasonal, sub-seasonal and short-term forecast is available for entire region of South Asia. We have on the right side more about the drought monitoring capability available for over 20 to 25 years of drought information. The third component is more on how do you make drought decision support tool that we call is a digital and dynamic contingency plan. On the right side, what you see in the center part is about how do you make decision support tool based on the issues that is emerging for a specific season, whether it is on a early season drought or a mid-season or a terminal drought. So it needs to be an integrated system rather than what we have in currently. If you look at India or many part of the region, what we have is each institutions have their own different information, whether it is IMD, whether it is manual office crop forecasting, whether it is Central Water Commission. How do you bring that everything in a single stack process so that we make decisions on a timely order, right? So with that, I would now request Dr. K.V. Rao, how they are using this information to make some drought relevant impact case studies coming from experiences from ICR.
Thank you, Giri, Dr. Giri. Can I have next slide, please? Indian Council of Agriculture Research, which is responsible for the agriculture research in the country, works along with the state agricultural universities to develop various management practices, be it in terms of developing the new cultivars, which is drought adaptive ones, or water management practices at on-farm level as well as into the watersheds. So it collaborates with the state agricultural universities, and all this information which has been emanated from various in different years across the states as well as from the ICR institutes. They are put into a particular product called district agricultural contingency plans. These agriculture contingency plans, of course, not only deal with drought but many other weather related disasters as well. But since the focus which has been mentioned on the SADMS product is basically for the drought, so I am putting this forward to you. And drought normally we consider only for the rain-fed areas, but we say that drought is also important in the irrigated areas. Next one, please. So as you can see, the types of droughts what we encounter in different rain-fed scenarios as well as irrigated scenarios that can be seen here. So at different points of time during the crop growing season we get droughts, and you can see because of the delayed monsoon or during the mid-season or even at the end of the season also. And this year's case is a particular one in different places. You can see that this has been happening across in the last few years. If you look at it, on an average also we get the drought is experienced in some or other part of the country, even in high rainfall regions which we assume to be having a good amount of assurance in terms of water resources are also experienced, and this is the case particularly for like states like Jharkhand and Bihar this year. And in the irrigated scenarios also, when we look at it, which are dependent on the rainfall as a major source, here also we encounter many of the times the droughts in the irrigated areas, particularly in the canal systems also. What we see, especially in the south as well as in the western part, we experience this sort of a drought-like scenarios that can happen because of various either in the canal systems or groundwater systems or tank-based systems. Next one. So having documented all this information into the contingency plans, what we do is we look at in terms of management of drought in a real time. So it starts with the before the commencement of the season, using the seasonal forecast itself, identifying the areas where it is going to come in terms of where the deficiency of rainfall could happen. So we identify them, and we work with the state governments to give advisories in terms of before the season itself to develop the plans in real time so that that can be implemented. And that is the first step. And during the season also we have the continuously monitored in terms of various parameters. All of them have been captured into the SADMS tools. And beyond the season also, beyond the main rainy season also we look at, because beyond the main rainy season, groundwater is one of the important factor even for the Rabi season. And any deficiency in rainfall in the season, Kharif season, would affect the sowings are growing of various cropping systems in different states, especially like Madhya Pradesh, etc., where the residual moisture or groundwater is utilized. So based upon the variability in the rainfall, we quantify in terms of what could be the prospects that can happen during the season, and accordingly the crop choices, etc., would be identified, and need-based water management interventions are also suggested. So in a way, if you look at this, so the whole in terms of ICR along with the state agriculture departments work in terms of trying to look at managing the droughts when it happens starting from before the commencement of the main season to the Rabi season.
While you have heard from Dr. K.V. Rao is more about how do you translate information for drought management measure. The other one, as we talked about any part of the region, is two sides of the coin, the issues of drought followed by flood. So this is an example very briefly of how technologies can be used to transfer risk. We have prototyped this product in states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and also in Bangladesh, what we call is a parametric index insurance program, where you could utilize modeling data, satellite data to trigger parameters related to depth and duration for a rice system. You could also do it for a maize and other crops depending on the crop loss assessment that you could develop. So we have tested this in a couple of villages and districts in India, and there is a good scope of integrating that in part of the Prime Minister Crop Insurance Scheme. So in country like Bangladesh, we have seen how this has been also scaled up as a livelihood resilience, or what they call is a social safety net program. This is very much relevant to the sector like agriculture and disaster risk management, how they can work together rather than being a silo here. The next slide. So the third intervention of our case study is also promoting a bundling solution, because this is quite not a fancy research, I would say, quite integrated thinking now, where in the past we talk about seed systems like private company, climate services, weather index insurance. A lot of institutions work in a silo-driven thinking. Now we developed this with ICR, taking a flood-tolerant rice varieties like Sorna Sub 1, maize varieties with seed companies, and we rolled out for farmers who are taking a better seed input, management practices, and a risk transfer mechanism, how we look at overall enhancing resilience. So we have seen a lot of capabilities of how this can be translated and building a better barriers into the adaptation focus. The next slide. So the last but not least, we are thinking into the big picture now. Here we are bringing a framework called AWARE, where we are bringing early warning, early action, and early finance. There are about 30 organizations are working with us in various parts of Africa. The idea here is we don't want to say technical institution, management institution, and the policy developer, or a high-level finance and planning division, all they are working in silos. So when you connect the dots, you could bring a better interconnectedness, promoting better governance, and also ensuring that the resilience is far more addressed by an integrated thinking rather than being a silo here. So I hope that there will be more opportunities to present on the evidences of AWARE, what we are just started early this year. Thank you again for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Giraj, for giving you a big point on SADMAS and how we have interventions in respect to IBFI as well as the bundling solutions for the flood situations in Bihar. And you are also integrating the contingency plans into Sadmas. That's a very good point. And we'll go to the next presentation. That is before breaking for question and our answers. Innovations in solar. No, I think next presentation is by water productivity of canal command by R.K. Panda. He is the director ICR, Institute of Water Management. So Panda is presently is working as director in ICR Institute of Bhubaneswar. Apart from working in IWMI Bhubaneswar, he worked in ICR Soil and Water Conservation in Dehradun and worked in the field of watershed management programs. He received his Master of Technology from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and also a PhD from ICR IRI. Extensively in the field of surface hydrology and watershed management. And as to his research activities, he has worked in several collaborative projects, both national and international organizations, and successfully completed several consultancy projects also. He has more than 70 peer-reviewed national and international publications to his credit. So now he is going to talk about water productivity of canal command areas.
Yeah, good afternoon, respected chair, co-chair, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to give a piece of research work which is collaborated among ICR Indian Institute of Water Management Bhubaneswar, IWMI and MPKB Rahuri Maharashtra. Next please. Next. Yeah, the outline of this particular presentation will be how this canal economic water productivity can be achieved in canal systems, and most especially this particular work is taken in a major irrigation system in Maharashtra state. Next please. Yeah, next. Yeah, this actually our focus will be when we talk of enhancing economic productivity in canal command. The focus is to see the water influence zone. What is a water influence zone? The canal command area, it consists of canal command area and a buffer zone around the command area and a part of reservoir catchment area. One classical example is taken from Sina medium irrigation system, which earlier we undertook this particular exercise among these collaborative institutes. Now this particular major irrigation system, what we have taken in Kukodi major irrigation system, the command area is, the official figure is more than 1,20,000 hectare. And next please. Interestingly, next slide. Yeah, the approach is while we are assessing the economic water productivity, the different data we have used, like combined satellite data and Google Earth Engine, which is used for to assess the extent of groundwater or conjunctive irrigation. And we did a groundwater modeling study also to ascertain the influence zone beyond the canal command area, and benchmarking the classical difference as well as the perennial crops. And if we see the cropping intensity is taken even is reported as less than 80%. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, when we see the land use pattern using remote sensing and GIS data, sentinel data, and over different years, a summer season 2020, Kharif season 2019, then Rabi season 2019, 1920, it is seen that, next please, it is seen that there is a substantial area of a crop outside the command area, which signature we got through the various temporal sentinel data, remote sensing GIS data. And seeing the water influence zone in this particular major irrigation system, it is seeing that the water influence zone is not extensive in this Kukudi major irrigation system due to the topographical constraint. Like southern boundary of this water influence zone is the Kukudi river, southern is the river, so there is no scope for this side, and no significant recharge beyond the northern border due to gradient. The northern border is completely hillock, a stretch of hillocks are there, so there is no much recharge scope for the southern side as well as for northern side. But still, the water influence zone is mapped through groundwater modeling study. And it is seen that in this particular major irrigation system, the major return flow from the canal is getting rejuvenated outside the command area through substantial pumping from ponds. There are open wells in the upper and mostly in the upper reach of the canal system is dominated by open wells. A number of open wells, more than 10,000 open wells are there, and in the middle reach, a good number of farm ponds are also available, and the return flow from the canal are getting rejuvenated in open wells and farm ponds, and the farmers are taking the advantage of this facility. They are going for cultivation in the beyond the command area boundary. That is the influence zone. So this is the study, and the previous study what I was just emphasizing little before regarding the medium irrigation system, Sina medium irrigation system, and this is a major irrigation system. If we
Thank you so much, Dr. Panda. Really important reflection on the importance of a whole of systems view in assessing water productivity. Our organizers have asked us to work through the tea break and take a few minutes to take some questions for the presentations that we've had so far. So we've had 5 papers so far. So I'd welcome your questions to the speakers at this point, if there are any. Do we have any questions? Apparently there was a request for questions, so presumably there are some. There we go. Please identify yourself and who your question is directed to.
Good afternoon. I am Sunil Kumar from Central Water Commission, and I am the next speaker. So my question is for Dr. Jagdish Purohit. I hope he's here, right? Sir, a very good presentation. But you said that irrigation economy is mainly based on groundwater, as it utilizes about 225 billion cubic meter of groundwater. But at the same time, we are utilizing about 450 billion cubic meter of surface water, and 90% of surface water is being utilized by the irrigation sector, which is of the order of 400 billion cubic meter. And it is well-known fact that the cost of surface water infrastructure is much higher than the groundwater infrastructure. So these figures goes on contrary to what you have concluded in the beginning, that the irrigation economy is mainly based on groundwater economy. So what's your take on this? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so their dependence of agriculture on surface water is there, and that include various sources, type of sources. But if we look at the groundwater sources that have certain limitation, and there are studies which clearly indicate studies from CWC, Central Water Commission, and Central Groundwater Board, these type of facts. So it is there.
Any additional questions? I have one over here.
Hi, this is Dr. Sangeeta Ladha from Riverless Irrigation. I'm into micro irrigation sector. My question is for Professor Amaranth. Is he here? Mr. Amaranth. Giri Rai. Acha, sir. So you showed about your drought, your real-time assessment of drought systems. So have you assessed some areas which has got consistent drought? Consistent drought areas, and any solutions for that? Means like apart from on the water management front. One is on the cropping front, but on the water management front, any solutions on that which you recommend?
Earlier, I think even in the earlier presentation, someone mentioned we have adaptation when they are talking about it. Water management as well as water supplementation is there. But the primary purpose in the rain-fed areas, what we look at is conserve water as much as possible as a first principle. And in places, if you look at in terms of the distribution of rainfall across the country, majority of them are coming under medium to high rainfall. And these are also rain-fed areas, which means to say that you have a source which you can harvest it during the season itself, and which could be used as a supplemental irrigation. So those areas are there, but the whole problem comes is only in those areas where low amount of rainfall is there, but if there is a successive continuous drought is there. So there also the first principle is to conserving at the farm level. Subsequently, wherever necessary, utilize it, supplement with the groundwater. So that is the major source what we are giving it from the waterfront. And this has to be coupled with, especially in low rainfall regions, drought resistant varieties, and improved management practices in terms of nutrition. And these are being demonstrated also across in NICRA villages across the country. It is about 151 villages, 151 districts. A cluster of villages are taken up. And you can see this information in our website also. Thank you.
Perhaps he also wanted to know that other than the water related, so there, as he says, there are contingency measures. That depends whether it's a early drought, mid-season drought, or end-season drought. So that would decide what the other contingency measures as well, even including like early sowing for the next season on the residual moisture, and also there, if there are mid-season droughts, then there are some foliar application to reduce the transpiration rates. So there are mix of things, but it depends at what stage of the crop growth it happens and what we call it early, mid-season, and the end-season drought or the terminal drought.
And all this information is captured in the contingency plans, and they are available in public domain in ministry's website as well as ISR's website, and even in on the SADMS tool also.
Thank you. Is there one more question that we can take in this segment? Last call? Go ahead.
So my question is to Dr. Krishna Noni. Initially, I think you presented a lot about PM-KSY scheme. So what do you think, like some states are doing much better when it comes to upscaling, drip irrigation, micro irrigation, where some states are lacking behind? From you working within the government ministry, what do you think are the reasons and what government is doing to basically make this uniform?
Hello. In the presentation, I had not mentioned that any particular state has made substantial progress or anything. I only gave an example of the Narayanpur left bank main canal of Karnataka as an example. I did not mean that Karnataka or any other state is doing better than others. If at all it is there, even though it was not part of the presentation, it's a new technology, and the price of water, the intrinsic value of water is different in different states. States having more drought prone area, they will give higher value to the water. So they will definitely put more investment in micro irrigation, because then they can, with the available quantity of water, they can cover more area. So definitely North Karnataka is having large percentage of DPAP area. Similarly, parts of Maharashtra is also having. So that may be a reason, but I have not gone into that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, let's move on now to the next segment. Okay, so let's continue. Our next speaker is Shilp Verma. Shilp is a specialist in water, energy, agriculture, and livelihoods and their interactions. He's an economist by training, and he's my colleague at IWMI, where he leads the IWMI Tata Water Policy Program. So, over to you, Shilp. Shilp is going to speak to us on innovations in solarization and agriculture.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about solarization of agriculture. And the reason why we are talking about it actually leads from something that the minister mentioned in the morning. India is the world's largest user of groundwater. I think if we list the countries in terms of groundwater use, India is on the top, and then comes United States, and then comes China. But India's groundwater use is more than United States and China combined. And that's one major reason, because to use groundwater for agriculture, you need energy. Therefore, water and energy are intricately linked, especially in the Indian, not just Indian, actually the South Asian context. And that's one of the reasons why this water, energy, food nexus has been part of IWMI's agenda for almost 20 years now. Now, the work that I'm going to present is basically talking about solarization. This is something that has happened in the last 10 years. You must have seen a large number of solar pumps are now coming up. They've caught the fancy of the Indian farmers, even though the costs are quite high because of the initiative taken by the government. There are several subsidies available to farmers, and the scale has also meant that the unit costs have come down. In the last 10 years, the costs have become less than half of what they were around 2010. So I'm going to try and, yeah. Now, globally, solar pumps can offer very high reliable energy for farming. And all of this energy is available during the daytime, which is when farmers also prefer to irrigate. It's also highly reliable. In most parts of the developing world, there is only a problem of too much sun, never a problem of too little sun. And it actually has a very good sync with irrigation. When the irrigation demand is the highest, that's when the sun is also the brightest. When the irrigation demand is low, it might be cloudy or rainy season, and that's when the solar energy is also less available. Now, interestingly, about 93% of the world's solar installed capacity, off-grid solar installed capacity, which is deployed for agriculture, is right now in India. Another 2.5% is in Bangladesh. That means South Asia is the hub of activity for solarization of agriculture. And there are several lessons that can be learned from India's and Bangladesh's experience, which will also be relevant for many parts of Africa, where right now the investments are low, but also has tremendous potential for solarization of agriculture. Now, in our work at IWMI and CGIAR, we have identified 4 pathways through which solar pumps or solar irrigation can transform food system. One is, of course, expanding sustainably the irrigated area. We know that even though in India we have about more than half the area is irrigated, in many parts of Africa, the irrigation coverage is only 5 or 6%. So specifically in those parts of the world, solar pumps can contribute to sustainably expanding irrigated area, turning rain-fed farmers into irrigated farmers. Then more so in the South Asian context, replacing diesel pumps with solar pumps can have significant implications for the cost, because the prices of diesel have been going up, and that is a big constraint for small farmers. But it also reduces pollution and the carbon footprint of irrigation. Specifically in the Indian context, even replacing electric pumps with solar pumps makes a lot of sense. We have about 15 or 16 million electric pumps, which consume about 16 or 17 billion US dollars of farm power subsidies every year. That's more than the next 5 years outlay for PM-KSY. So we are giving such high subsidies for the farmers to run these pumps, and that has also led to groundwater depletion in many parts. Now, replacing all of those with solar pumps presents an opportunity of reducing these subsidies, but it also presents a risk that because solar energy is zero marginal cost, it might lead to even more groundwater depletion, and that's one of the reasons why IWMI started working on solar irrigation. The final pathway to transformation of food systems through solar is what is called the pulse application. These are basically productive uses of electricity or energy in agriculture, which are outside irrigation. So for example, for cooling, for heating, for solar fencing, and all those applications which are where energy used in agriculture can be replaced with solar energy. Now, there are various kinds of solar pumps available in the market right now. If we look at the size of the systems, as well as the institutional models of ownership of the systems, all sorts of combinations are present. Some more in the Asian context, some more in the African context. For example, in Africa, it's mostly small sub-HP solar pumps which are popular, and they are also promoted as pay-go systems, where each of these systems is basically an enterprise, and it is selling irrigation as a service to farmers. But in the Indian context, thanks to government support and subsidies available, there are mostly individual farmers-owned solar systems or community-owned solar systems. In some cases, there are also larger systems which are run as enterprises, and I will talk about them. So there's a whole range of technical, economic, and financial models that are available in the solar irrigation space. Now, I'm going to talk in detail about 2 innovations on which IWMI has worked, and then I will follow that up by talking about some of the innovations on which we are working now. That will give you an idea of how our solar work is evolving. Now, I just mentioned that one probable danger with solar pumps is that because they offer something like free power, because once you install the solar panels, there is no running cost. There is only a very small cost of maintaining the systems. Because they offer zero marginal cost energy, they can lead to even more pumping of groundwater. Probably even they can encourage inefficient use of water. So how do we come up with solar business models that do not do that? For that, what we came up with was a model called Spark, or solar power as a remunerative crop. The basic argument here was that just as farmers use the sun's energy to grow crops, they can also use the sun's energy to grow solar energy as a crop. So we gave a few farmers solar pumps, but these were not like the solar pumps that the government is giving away. These were grid connected solar pumps. So the farmers have the option of using whatever energy they need for their own use, for irrigation and for other applications in agriculture. But the rest of the energy that they are not using, they can evacuate to the grid and earn money out of it, just as solar plants evacuate power to the grid and make money out of it. So this basically reduces the carbon footprint of irrigation. That will happen in any solarization, but it also reduces the farm power subsidies that create perverse incentives for overpumping. It also leads to creating incentives for efficient use of energy and therefore efficient use of water. It ensures 100% capacity utilization. In off-grid systems, when the pump is not working, all the energy that the panels are generating is actually going waste. But in grid-connected systems, you are using 100% of the energy that is generated. And because it offers an additional source of income to farmers, and this income is counter-climatic. If for some reason the farmer is not able to take crop because of a drought or a flood, they can still earn some income by selling all the energy and making money from the solar. So here we find that this is a model which basically facilitates using solarization of agriculture as also an instrument of groundwater governance. In the morning, the minister also talked about the need for better, improved groundwater governance in India through programs like the Atal Bhujal Yojana. And we feel that Spark can be a significant component of such a groundwater governance initiative, especially in the western and peninsular parts of India, which are facing severe groundwater depletion. Now, there's already been significant scaling of this small experiment that IWMI did. We started with experimenting this model as a proof of concept with one farmer in a village called Thamna in Gujarat. From there, we worked with the government to do a pilot at a village level in a village called Dhundi, where we also organized these farmers into the world's first solar irrigation cooperative. Now, that actually created a lot of positive attention in the media, and several policymakers also came and visited this village. And that inspired the government of Gujarat to announce a scheme called SKY, or Surya Shakti Kisan Yojana. Now, that has now become also a part of PM Kusum, which is the government of India's ambitious solarization program. And even outside India, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and in Pakistan, there are now experiments of grid-connected solar pumps, partly thanks to the SDC-supported project of IWMI called Solar. Now, the other experiment I want to talk about is in a very different context. It's in North Bihar, where the main challenge is not water scarcity. There is actually abundant groundwater available. The main challenge is land fragmentation, because land holdings are small and land is fragmented. So it's not economically viable for each individual farmer to own a solar pump on each of their parcels. So there we've come up with a solar irrigation service provider model. We've given farmers slightly larger solar pumps than what the government was giving. Government is mostly giving 1, 2, or 3 kilowatt systems. We gave the farmers 5 kilowatt systems, but also combined them with a network of buried pipes. Now, through these pipes, these systems can reach 80 to 100 farmers, and they basically become solar irrigation entrepreneurs. What we found is that this has led to significant expansion of irrigated area in these villages. Most of the diesel pumps have been crowded out. The farmers don't use diesel pumps anymore because all of them have access to solar energy or solar energized irrigation. The cost of irrigation has come down significantly. The effective cost is less than 40% of what it was with diesel, and that has led to significant improvement in the cropping intensity, irrigation intensity, and the overall value of output of that village. We've scaled from 5 entrepreneurs where we started from to about 22 entrepreneurs as of date, but we hope that the state government will also adopt this as part of their solarization program. Scaling of this is actually also happening in Bangladesh. Bangladesh solar program is also primarily entrepreneur-led, and we are working with the government of Bangladesh to help draw lessons from Bangladesh for India and from Eastern India to Bangladesh. It will also create green jobs and green enterprises, which we also feel that this is a model which also has tremendous learning opportunity between Asia and Africa, because there Africa is also mostly off-grid context. Now, some of the other innovations on which IWMI has been working on, we have worked with the Indian Council of Agriculture Research to develop the solar irrigation pump sizing tool, which has been adopted by PM Kusum and MNRE for their program. We've also worked on trying to find ways of fitting solar business models to different contexts by looking at the relative strengths and weaknesses of electricity utilities or DISCOMs. We have also started some work on agri-PV and Gujarat's experiment on canal top solar. So some of these are hopefully innovations that we will continue to work on. There are some experiments that we plan to do in Jharkhand as well as in Bihar, where we'll keep working on evolving new business models. Hopefully we can feed into MNRE's Kusum program in the future. Thank you. These are the key messages I want to leave you with. Solar pumps will transform food systems in Asia and Africa. And they are just more than just clean pumping solutions. They can enable a shift to sustainable agriculture through solarization. There is a need to do more innovation and experimentation still. I think the world is looking to India to lead the way because of the investments that the government has made. This is also evident from the investments the government is making in the International Solar Alliance. We are working with the ISA to make sure that the lessons from the South Asian context also get transferred to other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Excellent insights to the enterprise innovation opportunities that innovation of solarization opens, prospects that creates for food systems transformation. Very interesting. Okay, so we'll move along to our next speakers now. Dr. George Gyamba, sorry, my eyes are failing me. George Gyamba has a paper alongside Dr. Sorab,
Mr.
who will
Sorab,
be presenting, who is Deputy Director of the Central Water Commission, and is going to be presenting on a critical topic of performance evaluation and therefore performance improvement in irrigation projects. Please, Dr. Sorab.
Sure. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, Mr. Dorji could not attend this event, so I'll be presenting this PPT. So topic of my presentation is performance evaluation of irrigation projects. So, based on this presentation, you will, the irrigation experts in the house would not be very happy because the performance of the irrigation projects has not been as desired. And it is also one of the reasons why the dependence of irrigation sector on the groundwater has increased over the years. So I will take you through my presentation, which is mainly divided into 3 parts. First of all, I will give you a brief scenario of the water resources and irrigation sector in the country. Then I will give you the, based on few studies that we have conducted, what is the performance of the irrigation projects. And then finally, I will conclude by giving some of my recommendations to improve the performance of these projects. Okay. So currently, as you can see in the water sector, Indian water sector, our currently the utilizable water resources that we have is only 1126 billion cubic meters. So our utilization at the moment is currently within these limits. So we are safe for the moment. But when we look at the future demands, it is expected that by 2050 we are going to outshoot our availability of water resources. By 2050, it is expected our demand would grow to 1180 BCM owing to the population increase, growing urbanization, and various other issues. And out of that 1180 BCM, you can see almost 70% is the expected irrigation sector demand. So huge chunk of this, utilization is going to be in the irrigation sector. It is also due to the reason that because our crop water demand by 2050 is going to be almost 1.5 times of the current food crops demand. So it makes the sense that it is at most importance for these irrigation projects to perform at their highest level so they can deliver the benefits that were envisaged during their planning stage. But however, there are few challenges that we have observed in our irrigation sector in these at the moment. Our ultimate irrigation potential in the country is almost 140 million hectare. Out of it, we have already harnessed 112 million hectare. But currently, our realization of this irrigation potential is only 98 million hectare. So there is a significant gap of 15% in the irrigation potential created and being utilized. Further, there is an issue of low water use efficiency of irrigation projects. So this I will continue in my subsequent slides. Then the low values of productivity, and by productivity I mean the land productivity and as well as the water productivity. When I give the example of paddy, you can see the average delta that India is using for growing paddy is almost 980 mm. However, FAO suggests an average value of around 450 to 700 mm. And when we talk in terms of the land productivity, our average land productivity is only 2.7 metric ton per hectare, whereas the world average is somewhere around 4.7 metric ton per hectare. So we have got a significant scope of improving our productivity and making the more effective use of the water resources that we have at our hand. So talking about water use efficiency, CWC has carried out few studies for evaluating the water use efficiency of MMI projects. So the last of the studies were completed in 2012, which showed that the water use efficiency of our irrigation project stands at around 36% only. And by water use efficiency, I mean the water out of the total water that is made available by the irrigation project, what percent of it is being actually utilized by the crop for its effective growth. So that stands only at 36%. Further, for 10 more projects we are going to take up in the recent times. Then we have got the baseline studies that have been taken up by National Water Mission for another 26 MMI projects. And based on the 17 reports that we have received so far out of these 26, our water use efficiency is estimated to be somewhere around 38%. So effectively, you can say that our water use efficiency is somewhere around 35 to 40%. Then here are a few of the reasons that we have observed for low value of water use efficiency, primarily being the losses due to evaporation and seepage. Evaporation from reservoir as well as canal. Then due to lack of proper maintenance, there are damaged gate structures and also vegetation growth in the canal. And due to the vegetation growth and the sedimentation in the canal, we have reduced conveying capacity of the canals. Then there is issues of unlined or earthen canals leading to significant seepage losses from them. Then when the water is actually delivered to the farmer's field, there is again issue of low water use efficiency there due to the absence of command area development works or nominal water charges or traditional practice of flooding that has been followed by farmers in the country. And then deviation in cropping pattern leading very low or limited water for the tail end farmers, and poor maintenance of field channels and other facilities, and lack of farmer education and awareness for using the more water efficient techniques for irrigation purposes. And also these findings have been corroborated by another performance evaluation studies that has been conducted by CWC. These studies were conducted for around 28 MMI projects, and almost the findings that I have discussed already were corroborated by these studies as well. Then apart from these studies, there were few studies that have been taken up in collaboration with under India-EU water partnership. These studies were carried out through remote sensing techniques. So under this EU experts carried out the study and evaluated the projects on the basis of the 4 indicators that I have mentioned here. First is the percentage command area irrigated. Then there is the uniformity, then adequacy and reliability. Based on these indicators, it was assessed that the projects these were assessed only for 3 recently commissioned irrigation projects in the country, and it was recommended and it was assessed that the percentage irrigated cropped area that is there in these projects is somewhere more than 100%. So we are good on that side. But when we come to the uniformity part, you can see that when our desired value was less than 10%. For all the 3 projects, it was more than 10%, leading to the fact that the water that is available for the project is not uniformly distributed throughout the command area. Maybe because the head reaches farmer using more water, there is less water available for the tail end farmer. Then when we come to the adequacy part, adequacy means that the water, there is a seasonal requirement of the crop, whether it is being actually met from the project. So we can see that on this adequacy part, for these three projects, it showed the results were okay and these projects performed fine. Maybe because these were recently commissioned projects, so there was no issue of the adequate water being available to the crop. Then, however, the water that was available wasn't available at the time when it was needed. And this was shown by the indicator reliability. For the two projects, you can see the reliability values are more than 10%, indicating that the water was not available when the time it was required. Then another remote sensing studies were taken up through World Bank, and this was done for 10 MMI projects in the country. And almost similar indicators were used by these World Bank studies as well. Yeah, and only I have shown here only two indicators which are regarding uniformity and reliability. You can see out of the 10 projects, 6 of the projects showed very low values of uniformity. And also most of the projects, when I show the reliability in the terms of number of days that the actual water that was required was made available, you can see in one of the projects it was not available even for a single day. And most of the projects were only in single digit of days that it was available. Sorry. Then you can see that the performance of the irrigation projects has not been up to the mark, and there certainly need to upgrade our irrigation projects and improve their performance. So accordingly, Government of India has already taken few initiatives to to improve the irrigation performance of the projects. And few of the initiatives I mentioned here that includes the extension, renovation, and modernization of irrigation schemes. Then there is the AIBP scheme which has been included on the PMKSY, which puts stress on the pipe distribution network and canal automation for improving canal conveyance efficiency. Then command area development works taken under PMKSY, focusing on on-farm development works and setting up of water user associations. Then PMKSY per drop more on stressing on the micro irrigation instead of flooding, so as to increase the on-farm application efficiency. Then the Sahi Fasal campaign by National Water Mission to nudge the farmers to go for less water intensive crops or go for crop diversification. Then there is a Bureau of Water Use Efficiency recently set up by Department of Water Resources, RD and GR, that will holistically work towards increasing the water use efficiency in all the sectors of water use. Then there is another new initiative, Support for Irrigation Modernization Program, that has been taken up in collaboration with Asian Development Bank. Then few states on their own have also taken up initiatives such as Mera Pani Meri Virasat by Government of Haryana and Pani Bachao Paise Kamao by Government of Punjab, which in a way works towards improving the water use efficiency of the projects. So I will conclude by presenting few points that the performance assessment and benchmarking of irrigation projects is a very essential instrument to assess to keep a track of the performance of systems, and this should be a continuous exercise. It should be performed every year or maybe every 2 years to keep a check on the performance of the system. Then the improving the performance of irrigation projects is vital, as the currently in the supply side solutions are very limited in the country, and we need to focus on managing our demand side. Then we need to put impetus on timely and effective maintenance of the projects, because traditionally our approach has been towards the build, operate, neglect, and then rehabilitate the project, ultimately leading to more economics going towards the project. So in order to economize the whole things, we need to focus on the timely maintenance of the project, so that we do not have to focus on the rehabilitation part, that the project always remains in a state that it is desired to be. Thank you. That would be all.
Thank you, Saurabh, for giving us the brief account on performance of how the irrigation projects in India are being evaluated, what parameters are concerned, and what are the initiatives taken by the Government of India to improve the efficiency and all those things. Now, the next presentation is from Sunil Kumar is not there? There. So you are going to present, Sunil Kumar is going to present. He is a director in the Central Water Commission. You will be talking on emerging concepts for irrigation water management in India. Sunil Kumar. Please go ahead.
Very good afternoon.
Uh, I would like to say a few words about Central Water Commission before I start. Central Water Commission was established 2 years before our independence. So we are 2 years senior to our country, and I'd like to say that we have immensely contributed in development of water resources in the country. And experts like Dr. Sikka, who closely work with us, witnessed our contribution to the nation, right? I'd like to start where Dr. Biswas left by saying that we have enough resources in our country, and with the same expertise, we can manage our resources, right? So I'm going to flag certain irrigation water management tools and the prospect of the same in Indian scenario, how we can use it in an Indian context. There is a significant focus on the way we are dealing with issues and challenges of Indian water resources. There is a paradigm shift. We are focused more towards the management measures than the developmental measures like we used to do during up to 1990. So non-conventional water is the water which is other than the conventional water resources available in the reservoir or the water resources available in the ground. So one of them, the most important of them is the wastewater. As per certain estimate, we are going to generate about 50 billion cubic meter of wastewater in the country, which is sufficient to look after various uses of the country. We have more than 3,500 kilometers of coastal line. So we have abundant availability of sea water. So we can even go for desalination, and we can even harvest up to more than 100 billion cubic meter water resources in addition to what we have in the groundwater. So we have enough prospect to use the non-conventional water, and there are several advantages. There are several advantages of using non-conventional water. One of them is, as I have just presented, that there is enough availability of non-conventional water in the country, and the most importantly, this is independent of precipitation. So because the wastewater we are generating every day, the coastal line is available for desalination for every day. So we have abundant availability, and the non-conventional water will also ensure the assured supply of water. So these are the prospects, these are the advantages of using non-conventional water. But there are certain challenges, shortcomings also, constraints also. For example, if we are talking about irrigation water requirement, the irrigation water requirement is seasonal in nature. But if we rely upon non-conventional water, it will be coming to us every day. So how we are going to cope up with this demand-supply mismatch? So these are the challenges. If it is not appropriately, for example, the wastewater, if it is not appropriately, treated, it may lead to various health-related issues. So, and it calls for elaborate, R&D interventions if you want to use such kind of non-conventional water. And in the country like India, many of us have, the previous speaker, he also flagged that if you go for solarization in irrigation sector, it may result into overexploitation of groundwater. So to cater all this kind of situation, we need a strict regulatory framework in the country, which is presently not adequate enough. So these are the pros and cons of using the non-conventional water resources. PPP in water sector, this is a typical arrangement. This is a typical long-term contract between the government and the private sector, and there is another contract between private sector and the stakeholder. under this type of model, and the private sector provided certain services to the stakeholder, and a tariff, a revenue was collected from the stakeholder. If it is not sufficient to meet the expenses, then government can also provide certain subsidy. This is a win-win kind of scenario for management of irrigation water resources, because you can see the government does not require to provide all the finances, because the private sector will be providing the services to the stakeholder. So private sector will have access. Private sector will have access to the market, access to the public financing, and access. They can float the share. The government need not to manage, need not to arrange the funds required for providing irrigation water or any such services. Stakeholders will have options, because if private sectors are brought into the picture, so there will be the competition. So a stakeholder will have options to select the private organization of the choice. But unfortunately, the PPP in irrigation sector is not implemented yet. Probably we are going to see the first PPP in irrigation sector in the state of Maharashtra or Karnataka or Andhra very soon. But as of now, there is no PPP in irrigation sector. But definitely the PPP has been used in several sectors. Even in domestic sector, there is quite good use of PPP. The tools like water ATM is being used in Delhi, Rajasthan, and various parts of the country. And this is a very good example of PPP. But water pricing, is a prerequisite if you want to have PPP in the irrigation sector. But unfortunately, again, due to our various socio-economic compulsion, there is the water is priced in very few parts of the country, and the pricing is very low. So we are not able to even manage our infrastructure based on the prices we collect from the irrigation sector where it is implemented. And definitely regulatory framework, as I said, it is required for any management intervention we are thinking in the country. Regarding water tariff, very first time in 1992 United Nations Dublin Conference, it was recognized that water is an economic good. Obviously, water is free gift of nature. If it is falling in your farm or in your house, it is free gift of nature. But if it is provided by means of irrigation, it is an economic good, definitely. So water needs to be priced. CWC has given a guideline for pricing of the water resource. Even the Dublin Conference, they have given certain guidelines, and the main principle of pricing irrigation water resources is the affordability. In India, the socio-economic condition of our farmer is not very good all across the country. So we need to take care of this aspect of affordability. But this is also very important principle, that there must be full recovery of operation and maintenance of the existing infrastructure, which is providing irrigation to the farmer. Obviously, polluters to pay, and the stakeholders' participation is also of the utmost importance while deciding the price water tariff. Water footprint concept, I think Dr. Sil Verma is here. I think you are one of the originator of the concept. I have gone through several literature written by you and Dr. Ashok Chapagan. So this is a concept, I think is well known to all of you. The blue water is the surface water and the groundwater. Green water footprint is the water which is directly used from the precipitation. The gray water, there are several definitions of gray water, but the one given by you people is the water required to assimilate the load of the pollutant. But that is quite huge, I want to give you a feeling of this concept of water footprint. So these are the water footprint. For example, 1 kg of rice is 2,497. So these all are, you can see the component of green, blue, and the gray water. And these all are the global figures. So if we estimate these figures in the Indian scenario, there might be different sort of figures, but this is the normal breakup in terms of blue, green, and gray water. So, and I want to give you some other feeling of this, you can see one serving of aloo paratha is like 403 liters of water. For example, one serving of chicken biryani is like 3,473 liters of water, so on and so forth. You can see. So this kind of information can be used for, crop planning maybe. And you can see the trading of the water sources. So here I want to flag that the eastern region of the country, this part is having more per capita water availability. But you can see that it is the net importer of virtual water, right? So here I want to flag that merely water availability is not enough. It need to be supplemented by proper finance, by appropriate management measures. If you want to develop for the irrigation purpose. So this is what happened in here. This is they call perverse trend. This is a perverse trend happening. But there are certain reasons, because we have our management measures, our finances are focused in the northern part during the green revolutions, and that's why this happened. And the per capita water availability due to the flooding over here. So we have water resources, per capita water resources more than the northern part in the eastern part, but it is because of the flooding. We don't have arable land. So this is the reason for that. But we can reorient our irrigation related businesses based on the information of the water footprint. Water market is a virtual place or maybe a physical place where you can trade with your entitled amount of water. So it is a good incentivization to the stakeholders, because there is a slogan that you conserve water. But if it is also incentivized in monetary terms, then there will be good impetus to save the water. So yes, I'm going to conclude. I'm going to conclude, sir. I don't want to remain between you and culture program. So just 2 minutes. Yes. Thank you. So there are several pros and cons associated with the water market when we are talking about the implementation of the concept in the Indian scenario. You can see that it facilitates water trade. It's a great thing. It is happening. It is doing great in Australia, Chile, and western part of United States, some part of Spain. But when we are talking about India, so you have to be very careful. There are certain advantages, lots of advantages. The market forces are coming over here. You can assign the low value water to the high value water. For example, a group of farmers, they can save their entitled water and they can sell it to the industry. So the irrigation water is very cheap and the industrial water is very expensive. So you can assign a low value water even a higher value. But if you talk about the implementation of water market kind of concept in Indian scenario, you have to be very careful, because in India the surface water is owned by the state, by the government, but the groundwater is owned by the by overlying landowner. So what will happen in Indian scenario, similar to the solarization? The people will rely upon the surface water and they will sell off their groundwater. It will lead to further depletion of groundwater, and it may lead to the groundwater overuse. And since we have significant number of landless laborers, so they will have no right in the water market kind of scenario. So we have to be very careful. I'd like to conclude by saying that there are the bouquet of management tools available before us, but we need to customize, we need to innovate in the Indian scenario, and then only we should go for any kind of such management interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil Kumar. And now, of course, you have given a very good points on the emerging concepts in the water, particularly non-conventional. Also, I am from the Kolar district, you might have visited, where tertiary treated sewage water of Bangalore is being fed to entire Kolar district. And 20 years back, all our borewells have dried up. Now everything, all the borewells are, there are overflowing in our borewells. So that is the kind of situation in India. So, okay, next we'll go to the last presentation from Smarnika Mahapatra. She is from IWMI.
and she's going to talk on agricultural water management typologies, targeting land water management interventions towards improved water productivity. She is a research officer in IWMI, Delhi office. She is specialized in land water management. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Very good afternoon to all of you who are present in this session. So I am Smaranika Mahapatra and I am from IWMI, India. Today I am going to present on prioritization of land water management interventions for improved water productivity. Next. So as a lot of has been talked about agricultural water use, and you know agriculture is the dominant water user among all other sectors. So at a global scale, agricultural water withdrawal only accounts for 70% of the total freshwater withdrawal. And for developing before and for developing countries like India, it goes up to 90 to 95% of the total freshwater withdrawal. So, and as far as water availability is concerned, marked by climate change and anthropogenic factors, the 3/4 of the Indian population is already residing in water-stressed region. And one study in 2021 by Jain and others, they have reported that with the current trend of groundwater depletion without any adaptation, the cropping intensity in India is going to be reduced by 20% and by 68% in the groundwater depleted regions of India. So with the increasing water scarcity issues and the increasing water conflicting among the multi-users, so there is the increasing water productivity is one of the key pathways for bringing the water and food security and also enhancing the resilience. Next. Of course, there are a lot of variety of land and water management interventions available, and they are being promoted by government through different schemes and programs. But there, it is important that they are being they should be prioritized and rightly indicated, rightly chosen for improving the water productivity and bringing resilience to the system. So with IWMI in this line has partnered with GIZ India and has developed a typology-based approach and for identifying the broad agricultural water management interventions. Typology is nothing but in the agricultural and water domain. It is nothing but grouping the entities based upon their agricultural and physical characteristics. These typologies offer a new perspective for planning developmental activities related to agricultural and natural resources management. This particular approach has three broad objectives. That is to help policymakers for identifying the broad baseline agri-water conditions. Second is to recommend and prepare the typology-specific national policies and programs. And third is to capture the local diversity of agri-water indicators for prioritizing and planning management interventions. Next. Next. The core methodology of this typology-based approach, it mainly targets for increasing the district level agricultural water productivity within the limits of current renewable annual water availability of the district. It mainly aims for increasing the crop production or through by decreasing the water use through increasing the water use efficiency. The particular approach, it considers 4 types of data and they are categorized into different classification systems for concluding at different typologies. So the data sets are cropping intensity, yield gap, groundwater availability, and of course, for reflecting the available storage of groundwater resources and accessibility, topography data and the CGWB classification system of the aquifer system, they are also considered. Next. So this results in particular total 12 typologies the total 657 districts, they were classified into 12 typologies, and they are like high value diversification district, demand management district, ground development district, water conservation district, and so on, and hilly areas, of course. Next. I'll be very briefly describing different examples of typologies. So first case is high value diversification district. These districts are they are like they have very high cropping intensity, but the average groundwater development is within sustainable limit. That indicates the groundwater withdrawal is in sustainable limit. So the main developmental priority for this kind of districts is to increase the cropping, sustaining that cropping intensity by limiting the groundwater withdrawal within the sustainable limits. So the development priorities are increasing farmers' income through diversification and high value crops, then irrigation and agronomic measures to increase yield, and of course reduce the yield gaps. Like the yield gaps here is about 24 and 34 percent in soft rock and hard rock type aquifers. Then sustainable groundwater development and also efficient use of water resources. Next. Then comes the demand management district. This demand management district, they are the districts where cropping intensity is very high, and they have very less yield gap as compared to other districts. But the groundwater development, you will see they are very high. That means the groundwater withdrawal is not within sustainable limit. So you can see those districts are mainly concentrated in Punjab, Haryana, and northwestern Madhya Pradesh districts. So the main target is to demand management side. First is demand management through technological and policy interventions. Then, of course, using the available water resources more efficiently and augmenting the available water resources. What are they available? Then they are again divided into aquifer types, soft rock and hard rock types. You know, soft rock, they are abundant water resources available, and for hard rock aquifers, there is a limitation of groundwater resources. Therefore, and also for those type of districts, the yield gap is high. At about 26, average value is 26%. So for those kind of districts, the development priorities would be increasing yields through agronomic measures such as increasing the soil fertility, and also by using different high yielding variety crops. Next. Next, please. Then comes the local low crop production districts. For example, the groundwater development districts here and watershed development districts. So these districts, you can see they are mainly concentrated towards the eastern part and northeastern part of the country. These districts are characterized by very high value of rainfall, and you can see the yield gaps are very high. So the main target here is to for rainwater management and irrigation expansion, increasing yield through agronomic measures to reduce the yield gap, then development of innovating farming system like integrated farming system and all. For groundwater development districts, of course, improving the affordable farm energy and groundwater lifting and other farm operation is the target. And for watershed development, of course, developing and effective implementation of watershed management plans. Next, please. So these are the examples of few typologies. Next, please. So after getting the broad typologies, it is important that we should focus on the local scale as well and small agri catchments. So in this line, IWMI has partnered with ITC Limited, and it has developed a framework and in very interesting framework and tool for drought proofing of small agri catchments. So this tool is a very simple and but very conceptually robust one. This is an Excel-based tool that can be used by people on the ground. It also requires very minimum data, and it can simulate different scenarios, different management scenarios to assess the impacts. and to choose what are the right kind of interventions to adopt in those locations. Next, please. The core methodology of this tool adopts different popularly used methods such as USDA, SCS curve number method, FAO methodology for crop water requirement, etc. Next. Next, please. Also, one of the feature of this tool is that it includes a huge amount of inbuilt database. For example, it includes 45 plus crop details, their parameters, then soil types, then soil properties, and land use, the curve number values, so that it requires very less amount of data when you are going to apply it to agri catchments. And it also includes 20 plus interventions to simulate the impact of interventions. And those interventions include supply side interventions, demand side interventions, and soil moisture interventions for different target developmental priorities. Next. And this tool gives results in terms of different water balance components, the economy cost benefit ratio, and also the crop parameters. What is the crop water requirement? What is the crop yield, and etc. So this tool has been applied across 4 diverse water sets in India and in partnership with ITC. And also there is a plan for applying this tool for water set planning across 15 states of India. And also we are in talk with Karnataka water set development for actively planning interventions in 100 plus water sets. Next. So the main message of the presentation is that agricultural water management interventions are the key for building resilience, but when rightly identified and prioritized for context specific, then also it helps in policymaker and program designers for identifying the broad reference conditions of clusters of district in terms of agri water issues. And those target interventions, those can be aligned with policies and schemes that are ongoing to achieve water security at local as well as at a macro scale. So this also can capture the local diversity for prioritize and planning management interventions, and accordingly prepare typology differentiated national policies and programs. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Smanika, for presenting the typology-based agriculture water management interventions. Of course, it's a very useful tool for policymakers, and they should adopt in their policy decisions. Next, I will call chairman of the session, that is Mark Smith, to invite for the questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. We just have a few minutes for some final questions for this last group of speakers. So you have a question? Please raise your hand now. Please, Dr. Rao.
The representative of CWC is not here. Yeah, please, here. I would like to ask 2 questions. The first one is about the irrigation ultimate potential as well as potential created, potential utilized. Do we have that information at the district level and the season level in the spatial format?
Actually, sir, these data that I had showed regarding the UIP IMC, these old data I have quoted from a report of 2012. So all these data are not as of date. These data are up to 2012 statistics that were available. And all these data are only available from state-wide. So I don't think the district-wise classification is there. No, I don't think it's even see that. It's in the terms of the MMI projects. And collectively, for the whole state, you can get a data, this kind of data.
Your colleague was mentioning about the surface water belongs to state governments. Surface water belongs to state governments. Is that so? I think whatever water falls onto my understanding is whatever water falls onto the individual farms, it belongs to the farmer. Whatever when it goes into the streams, etc., maybe that could be. But that statement, I think, is a highly exaggerated statement, I suppose.
Perhaps just a brief answer, please.
Sir, in this regard, I think the speaker meant to say that
Yes. No. That is green water. That is green water. That's why surface water means the water in the lakes, in the ponds, the reservoirs. These waters, that belongs to the government, right?
Okay. Okay, yeah, you can have a discussion yourselves because none of us can hear it anyways. So,
Broadly, I was meaning that. Yes. But I appreciate your point. Yeah, thank you.
okay. Any last question? Otherwise, it's time to close things down. Would you like to make a last remark? Okay, I will do so. So I commented at the start of the session that agriculture was such a critical component of the puzzle of sustainable management, sustainable development and sustainable management of water. And I thought that the collection of papers that we heard today, which were all excellent, the collection of papers that we heard today showed us that within that puzzle of water and sustainable development is the puzzle of how to improve agricultural water management, because we heard about the importance of irrigation system performance and how to assess that, the importance of climate change adaptation and risk management and ways to do that, groundwater sustainability approaches, land and water management, and the way those can be tailored to address water productivity, the assessment of water productivity, the opportunities that non-conventional water creates for water management in agriculture, the innovation and enterprise level innovation that's possible through solarization. So all of these elements, I think, weave together to create packages going forward for how to resolve that puzzle of agricultural water management within the bigger puzzle of water and sustainable development. And it's tremendously important that we get better at, I'm mixing my metaphors, I always do this. It's very important that we get better at pulling the pieces of these various puzzles together. And that will help us succeed in the face of the challenges that we have to face up to in water management and in agricultural water management. So let us close there. Can I please have a round of applause for all of the speakers? Thank you, and our organizing partners and the organizers and all of your great efforts in making sure we had a great session today. So thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Chair and co-chair and all the learned audience. I think you're the final words.
So thank you everyone for being here, and indeed we had a wonderful session by all our distinguished, speakers and guests. I now request Mr. Alok Sikka, IWMI, to please come up on the stage to present the mementos to each of our speakers. I now request Mr. Mark Smith, IWMI, to please come up on the stage. Can we have a huge round of applause? I now request Mr. S.N. Bhaskar, ICAR, to please come up on the stage. I request Mr. N. Krishnani, CWC, to please come up on the stage. I now request Mr. Jagdish Purohit to please come up on the stage. May I request Mr. KV Rao, CRIDA ICR, to please come up on the stage. May we please have Mr. Shilp Verma, IWMI. Now I request Mr. R.K. Panda, ICR, IIWM, to please come up on the stage. I request Mr. Saurabh, CWC, to please come up on the stage to receive your memento. Mr. Sunil Kumar, Director, CWC. I request Ms. Marnika Mahapatra, IWMI, to please come up on the stage. I now request Mr. Faiz Alam, IWMI, to please present the memento to our chair, Alok Sikka, IWMI. Can we have a huge round of applause? I now request, sir, I will request Mr. Faiz to please be on the stage. And I will request Mr. S.N. Bhaskar, ICAR, to please come up on the stage to present the memento to Mr. Faiz Alam. Thank you once again, everyone, for being a part of this amazing technical session, and we hope to see you tomorrow again. We have another cultural program starting in 5 minutes. The ministers are arriving, which will be followed by the dinner. I request everyone to please join us at the cultural event. It's right outside the main hall. Sorry? Thank you once again, everyone, for being a part of International Water Week 2022, and we hope to see you tomorrow. We'll be here again for another technical session. Thank you so much.